to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hey, welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. I have a special sponsored episode for you today. This show is sponsored by American OEM, which is one of our nation's leading hardwood flooring manufacturers. And we're so lucky because we have Allie Finkell on the show with us today. And Allie is what we call, I have to tell you, my friend John Dupre from Revel Woods said Allie is royalty in the wood flooring industry. And I was like, what are you talking about, John? And so, of course, it's true. So Allie is the great-granddaughter of L.W. Anderson, who was the founder of Anderson Hardwood Floors. Now, I know that that's a name that you know because I don't even know this end of the business, and I've heard of Anderson Hardwood Floors. Allie has spent her life immersed in the hardwood flooring industry. She first had an early career in sales and marketing in New York City, and eventually Allie came back and joined the family business, taking on a sales position covering northeastern U.S. During this time, Anderson was acquired by Shaw Industries, and Allie helped lead the introduction of hardwood, laminate, ceramic, and vinyl into Shaw's commercial product line. 2013, Allie took on the role of Director of Marketing for Mohawk Industries, building another commercial hard service program from the ground up. Allie followed her family roots back to hardwood in 2014 when she joined American OEM as Executive Vice President, helping grow the Anderson Finkell legacy of beautiful, enduring, American-made flooring for the next generation. All right, here's the thing. She's a smart lady. She's a graduate of Furman University, and she has a bachelor's degree in economics. Now, I want to tell you my personal connection to Allie before I introduce her and bring her onto the show. You know John Dupre of Revel Woods, and you know how much I adore the business model and the way that John is reintroducing the hardwood flooring industry to you as an interior designer. This past spring, Allie and American OEM invited Revel Woods to invite several designers for an experience in Nashville at their factory. And I was lucky enough, Vin and I were both lucky enough to be included in this event. And this is where I met Allie. And Allie, wait till you meet her too, engaging, so smart, so passionate, and so knowledgeable about this industry. And she spent a day with us, taking us through the factory that they have in Tennessee. And I'm going to ask right off the bat, Allie, about this factory. But here's the thing. A factory tour where hardwood flooring is produced is fascinating unto itself. But Allie and her team, her family and her team, they operate their factory in a penitentiary in Tennessee, and it's called the Prison Industry Enterprise. It is remarkable. So I'm looking forward to sharing that experience with you. And then Allie is going to talk to us some more about the differences in hardwood floor that's made in the U.S. versus China. She's going to talk to us a little bit and break down what the difference is between wood and LVT. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the relationship that Allie and American OEM have with Revel Woods and why and how that has brought Allie and myself together. So, Allie, thank you for being on my show. And I'm so excited to connect with you again.
Thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be a participant on your podcast. So thank you.
Yes. So, Allie, I mean, you here. We're going to talk about a lot of things, but tell us. I mean, we were so impressed with your factory and everything that goes on down there. Tell us about this prison industry enterprise and the way you make your hardwood floors within this environment and this setup and this business model.
Sure. So this is actually the 8th prison facility that my father has set up manufacturing plants inside of the fence. So when you guys were there, you can attest to the fact that, the gate closes behind you. It's pretty intimidating and you're in the mix with the population. But we selected this prison in Tennessee outside of Nashville because it had a very large building that was formerly a furniture factory. And it's kind of interesting because that factory was only supplying government contracts, and because it was run by the state, they didn't pay, the offender labor more than 10 or 15 cents an hour, and they still went out of business to China. So furniture is an industry that was really hit pretty hard by that, but that's what left us this great building, and then also some of the legacy, kind of experience with having a private sector industry inside of the prison walls. So we started that in 2013, started building the plant. We have a great combination between leading, edge high-tech equipment in there and then also some legacy equipment. So we are very versatile inside the plant, what we can make and the types of designs and, textures and staining. And we like doing the prison program for a lot of reasons, but the benefit to us, we are a for-profit company, and so we're trying to make the best product we can for the best price that we can. And we get such a dedicated workforce of people who love showing up to work every single day. We get, the absolute smartest, most hardworking people in the population. It's the top 10%. We pay a fair wage to the offenders. It actually goes through a third party, which is the prison industry enterprise, is sort of you can think of it as the HR function. We contract that labor from the state. They're the go-between that handles the hiring, the firing, and the paying. And because of that, it's the only opportunity for these men while they're incarcerated and serving time to do any sort of meaningful work and be compensated fairly for, their efforts. And we do have a wage structure that sends, immediately just like your check and my check, 25% of that is going to go back to the state to pay taxes and room and board. And then we also have a percentage of that wage that goes to the victims. So whoever they committed the crime against is receiving a percentage of restitution from the wage that we're paying. We have 10% at minimum goes into a savings account, which is really a critical piece to the rehabilitation and the ability for these offenders to start over and become productive members of society when they get released, because they have a nest egg, saved up that goes along with these, skills that they've learned while they're working. And child support and alimony gets paid out of that wage too. So it's really a fantastic structure. I think, the state wins, the offender and their family wins, the victim win, and then we win because we have people who are so passionate about the work that they're doing that we can do beautifully designed, high quality, handcrafted, hardwood floors right here in the U.S., which is, something that's very difficult to compete these days. So
I have to say you've mentioned a couple of times that the men that are involved in your factory program here are dedicated and excited to come to work. I have to say, I absolutely felt that they had when we went to each station. You brought us through from the very first step in making a floor all the way. It took us several hours to go all the way through, and to the last station where they were in boxes. And at each station there was a man there explaining to us what his job is. Now, your team also was informing that, but often the men themselves would say, oh, and you forgot to tell them this part, or this is my favorite part, or, look at how we do this. And they were so involved and so into it. And, why not? I mean, honestly, when you think about, I remember your saying to me, Allie, and this was one of those sentences that just went right. I was like, whoa. You said a sentence that, you said so often, this enables an offender to sometimes, if it's, if this enables offenders that have families to keep their families intact. Because you said so often the woman is left on the outside with maybe one or two or more children and no way to support herself. And you said this keeps that family. If the couple is a couple that's intended to stay together and stay intact, now they can. She's not forced to figure out another way to support herself and her children that's beyond her abilities to do, right?
Absolutely. Most people, both parents, have to work now. It takes that to, financially survive. Mm-hmm. And when you lose the breadwinner or one of the partners to incarceration, obviously there's the primary victim of the crime, but there's a secondary victim, which is the partner and the children of the offender who gets locked up. And, this is a medium security level 2 prison. So the guys have to be incarcerated. They have to have at least 3 years left on their sentence. Otherwise, it doesn't really pay for us to take the time to train them. And, some of them are in for 15, 20, 30 years or longer. And so when you are on the outside as the family, you probably have to move on and find somebody else because it takes 2 to live.
Right.
But with our guys, they really don't have anything to spend the leftover money on. So after it goes to savings and the other deductions for the state, most of them send it home. Right. And so now all of a sudden they are much more connected to their families, and it increases visitation quite a bit, which adds to quality of life and, feeling good while you're there, not so lonely. And then the other thing is, it increases the chances that they are going to be welcomed back into that family when they get released, which is how you start over.
Right. That's the thing. There's 16 different avenues to take this conversation, all that, you can't negate the fact that someone broke the law and there is a victim of that crime that they committed. But past that conversation, as a human being, as a society, the whole point is do your time and come out and start again, right? So if we take it from that point, setting people up with the best possibility of being able to say to themselves, to their family, to society, I did that. I'm sorry, I paid, and now I do want to turn over and start a new way of life. This is such a foot up, a leg up in order to be able to realistically be able to do this, as opposed to so many offenders that come out, to your point, have lost their family, have no income, have no savings account, and have no skill to get a job, and they come out and often revert to the ways and the things that got them in to begin with because they don't see a way out. And so
That's the cycle.
Yes, it is. And the thing is, look, it's always, everybody has to take responsibility for their actions, and that has to be a true account of your actions. But for the people who want to do that, you really do provide a way to see the window of, if I take account and responsibility, I can see my way through this and I can create another life. It was absolutely remarkable experience. And some of the things that stand out on the personal side of it with the inmates there and the men that were there, and then we'll get to the actual manufacturing of the wood side of it. But
that's okay. I can talk about it forever.
I know, right? Some of the things that I remember your representative telling us that day, he said things like, there's a waiting list to be accepted into the program to work in the Hardwood division. So there are many jobs in a prison. There's the laundry, there's, whatever the jobs are, right? But there's a waiting list to be accepted into your company there, your position there. And there's a very strict policy for keeping that job.
Yes.
Right?
So the first thing that I sort of assume it's everyone knows, but they don't. But it's voluntary, so these guys don't have to work for us. And but to your point, we have 200 offenders that we contract that labor, and they show up and work with us every day. And we have over 600 on the waiting list. and just hoping for a chance. And then we also have, men that are trying to be transferred from other prisons to our prison in Nashville just for the opportunity, the chance that they could work with us, because it's the only paying job in prison. The other jobs that you mentioned are state sponsored. They maybe make 10 cents an hour being on laundry duty or in the kitchen, but this one is a real fair wage, and we're kept honest by that third party that goes out and does a wage survey. So within a 50 or 100-mile radius of the plant, if we're hiring a mechanic, they're going to see what mechanics in the civilian world make, and that's what sets the wage. And that's done every 6 months, so it fluctuates with the times. And so that's how we don't get any savings as far as labor goes. But yeah, it's an incredible opportunity for these guys, and so most of them are doing everything they can to get it, and then everything they can to keep it, because if they have any infraction, if it's behavior or with a guard or contraband, they're out of the program immediately, and they can't even reapply for 6 months, but then they're at the back of that waiting list. So there's a lot of incentive for them to stay, on the straight and narrow while they're serving time and working for us, which in turn, helps make the prison more safe for the guards and the other offenders.
It's remarkable, actually. I mean, when you think about, that's the point I was looking to be brought out, that if they have an infraction with a guard or, like you said, contraband, I remember learning it could be a minor infraction. If a guard just doesn't, if you sass a guard and a guard writes you up, and in a regular environment, that would be whatever it is, it's a write-up, but that write-up results in losing this position. So that write-up might not be, extra penalties within the prison rules themselves, but that is like, okay, you're out. And to your point, it's there's a lot of incentive to not just be doing your best during the hours that you're working in the factory, but be your best and think about the consequences of giving into impulse and maybe old patterns and things and anger that might have put you in this place to begin with, right? So it really is a full-rounded program to rehabilitate, which is the whole point of prison, right? Is to rehabilitate and give a second chance.
Yeah, that's right. It's certainly the goal, but I think in the traditional system, there is a cycle of incarceration because we just don't do that great of a job, getting these guys equipped to be productive members of society, and we stack the deck against them. And what we're able to do in this program is try to reverse that, give them every chance to make better. And like you said, some people are not going to make good on that, but the numbers support that most people do.
Right.
And over, between 50 and 60% of offenders in this level prison, when they're released, go right back. They reoffend, they get convicted, and they go back to prison. That's a terrible number.
Right.
But within our program, less than 10%
Whoa.
return. So it really does work, which is great. And we get beautiful product,
Yes.
There's something in it for us too, but it's just so nice to do something that you feel really proud of and that restores dignity to human beings, which everyone deserves.
Right. And I love too that, Allie, that you mentioned that because there are other wood flooring manufacturing facilities in that 50-mile radius of your facility, often when these men leave, they're hired by these other facilities. And I remember you're telling us in the tour that these other facilities love to get your guys that leave there. Absolutely. Because they're so well trained and they have this dedication and they have developed this discipline and they have developed this love of this trade and this craft that they've learned.
Yeah, they're ready for a second chance, and they're some of the best employees. And some of these guys too, they're not just, entry-level manufacturing jobs. Some of them become managers on the line, and so they're highly skilled, highly trained, and highly dedicated. So yeah, they get snatched up, pretty much as soon as they leave, which is also great.
Yeah. And then one last thing that I want to share on this personal side of the visit and with the experience with the offenders is I know it was a complete coincidence, but it was remarkable how serendipitous it was. We all, like you said, buttoned up process in order for each of us to get in, and our IDs and all of this stuff. And, this conversation about when you go into the prison and don't do this and do this. And then we had like a little alarm on us. Like if you talk into this, the lead is going to hear it. And I'm like, whoa, okay. Right.
It's serious.
Yes. Right. And then it was the series of the doors, like go in here. We're going to lock behind you before we unlock in front of you, blah, blah, blah. Right. But then we had that part where we walked from the facility for check-in over to the factory part where we walked outside. And I don't know if you remember it, Allie, what happened, but I happened to be walking in the front, and I was like the second or third person in the line of the 15 of us that were there, and I was walking with your representative. That's the foreman.
Yeah, the head of manufacturing.
Yes,
yeah,
Doug, right. I was walking with Doug, and and we're chatting on this pathway, and walking towards us was a man, and he was walking towards us, and he had a big clear, almost like a hefty bag, but it was clear over his shoulder, and you could see that it had, clothing or whatever it had in it. I don't even know. And Doug looks at this man, and I want to say his name was Mike. I don't know why, but he was like, Mike, today's the day. And he said, sure is, Doug, today is the day. And he said, well, Mike, good luck to you. Just wish you all the best. And he said, thank you. He walked away, and they didn't stop. He just talked to him, and Doug looks at me and he goes, he's going home today with $30,000 in his bank account to start his life over.
Yep.
And I was just
Isn't
like,
that crazy?
Whoa. Like, whoa.
And let me tell you, and you probably know this, but it's normally when you get released, you get $100 and a bus ticket.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have a felony on your record. Like, what are you supposed to do with that?
Right.
But he can buy a house and buy a card. Actually, I know who you're talking about because I'm friends with him on Facebook, and he is living the life right now. I mean, he is really enjoying. But yeah, I've actually never had that experience when I went in and I got to say goodbye to somebody as they were walking out and see it. But it was a pretty joyous.
It was like, I'm going to tell you what it was.
Right?
It was like a what's that show? Oh my goodness! Oh my God! A Forrest Gump type moment.
Yeah,
it totally was. I was like, is this a movie? Did they set this up just so this would happen at this exact time? It's amazing.
If I knew how to do that, I'd do it for every tour, but I don't. I just got lucky.
Well, that's what I said. I'm like, come on, LuAnn. You're like a little too cynical here. but I mean, it was amazing. And you could see the genuine rapport and regard that Doug and this gentleman had for each other. And this gentleman was just beaming with pride on leaving. And it's just so different. And I just, it was just incredible. And so, Allie, one thing I didn't know that your family this is the 8th facility. I did not know that. I thought this was a one-off thing that you did in Tennessee. I did not recall learning that there were 7 others across the country. What an amazing thing that you do for, not only the wood flooring sector, but for this the prison reform industry. Amazing. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Just to clarify that, we don't own all of those anymore. Those are from previous businesses, but my dad was the first to implement that model in our industry, and because it works so well, he's continued to do that, and it's actually one of the reasons he feels like it's almost the only way to be competitive as a wood flooring manufacturer in the U.S. now that, the East has become such a factor. So he's stuck with that model for a variety of reasons. But yeah, this is the only plant that we own through American OEM currently.
Okay. All right. And that's going to bring us right into this conversation about manufacturing in the U.S. versus outside the U.S. So get us going in that. And what do we need to understand, and why do we care, and what are the differences in that regard, Allie? Now, hang on. I'm going to just cut you off. I wanted to get my sentence out. I'm not sure if your mic is a little close, but there's a lot of the putts into it, when you're talking. Okay. So just pull it a tiny bit away and then go ahead and start with your answer. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I think what people need to know about wood flooring and where it's made now is that it's very different. The landscape has changed dramatically in the last, 10 to 15 years. So it used to be that almost everything was made in the United States from American raw materials. We did go through our, Brazilian cherry phase for a while, and a lot of that came from South America. But now, most of this higher end product, even unless you know for sure it's made in the U.S., it probably isn't. And it's because we're having such a hard time competing with them. It's really not a fair practice, because when you can purchase logs from the U.S., because a lot of people are using, hickory and red oak and white oak and all of that's coming from here, maple, and send it all the way over to China, process it into engineered wood flooring, and send it all the way back. And that manufacturer can sell my customer cheaper than my cost. That math doesn't add up, because it's not that and you can speak to this because you've seen the factory. It's not like we're using antiquated technology and there's tons of waste, and it's as efficient, as it can be, but the government in China really subsidizes some of the costs. So it's very difficult for us to compete here with our practices. And there is absolutely some beautiful high quality wood that is being made in China and sold in the U.S. So I don't want to misrepresent at all. But I think it's harder now to know what you're getting. I think there's a lot more vendors out there and suppliers and a lot of names. And honestly, I feel bad for folks even on the, who are running a retail flooring store as a designer, when you have to know so many products. Just this one category can be so overwhelming because there's so many people that are kind of, no name. And the private label was something that didn't happen before. You had big brands in the U.S., the Mannington, Shaw, Armstrong, Mohawk, and a lot of that now is private label brands, which are regional. It's hard to trace back and see who's really making it, what's really going into the product. And, it's the same rule, I think, that applies to almost everything. If it seems too cheap, it's probably going to be performing cheap. The price does play a role in the quality. Okay. And something that, and also the sustainability, where are you getting the raw materials? What type of finishes are you using and adhesives? Are they off-gassing harmful chemicals? Those are the kind of things that we know for sure in the European made and the US made factories. We hold really tight standards on that, and we're watched closely, and the government keeps us honest. And if they don't, then I guess the 60 Minutes will keep us honest.
Right.
But it's a little bit harder to have that same type of transparency and to know that what you're being told is the actual facts, I think, when you're talking about overseas production. But, looking at the product, it does make a difference what type of species are in the layers, what size the layers are. The thickness of the wear layer is very important. That's something that when I would look at a product, 10 years ago, the top layer, the part that you actually walk on, the part that gives you the visual of whatever species is, there, that thickness has gotten lower and lower and lower. Now, with our advanced finishes that have the aluminum oxide particle, you do get exceptional scratch and wear through resistance. They're cured. You saw it with the UV light. It looks like it's going through a little tanning bed. It does cure incredibly hard, and it does protect the wood wear layers. So hopefully you're not actually walking on the wood, you're walking on the finish. But when you have a paper thin wood wear layer, any damage to that is going to be, the same as having a laminate where you just go through and any sort of deep scratch or chip, you're going to see the white, the natural wood underneath or whatever material that they're using. And it isn't the same, as a construction that has a, 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter wear layer on the top. It's just a different ballgame.
Right. So the thing is, we almost went into territory that I'm like, whoa.
Yikes, okay.
That's so back up a second. So what I didn't understand is, and I never heard, I had no idea, is you're saying that the Chinese factories are purchasing our raw hardwood materials, so our raw woods here, the hickory, the maples, and so forth. They're having them sent back over there. They're making it into hardwood floors, sending it all the way back, and they're able to sell it at prices that are less than what it costs you to make, is what you're saying. And are you telling me that because the government is paying for a lot of that just so that, why? So they can be competitive here and tap into our market. That's the point of that?
Yeah, really to erode the industry, just like they did furniture and cabinets, and, they got their sights set on some other industries that are not interiors related, like, airplanes. But yeah, it's really a predatory practice. And when we estimate it out, and there is, and I won't go too far into this because this is more my dad's mission, but there is a lawsuit right now filed with the Federal Trade Commission that is called an anti-dumping suit, which is saying, hey, the government over there is dumping product at too cheap of prices into the U.S. and we can't compete with that. It's not fair. We're happy to go toe to toe when all of the the variables are equal. We feel we would dominate that space.
Right.
However, when we do the calculations, the reduction in their cost is the same as what we see in our raw material cost. So it seems as though the government is subsidizing the cost of those raw materials. And I'll tell you, too, that they started buying the actual sheets of veneer. So when you take a log and you spin it like a paper towel roll and you pull off the sheets, that's the same way you cut, veneer out of logs for rotary products. They started buying those. Well, then after a little while, they got a little bit more technology and know-how, and then they started buying logs, and they work back through the chain. And so now all of a sudden we're selling logs, which have the least amount of margin when you sell a raw material than any of the value add parts of the chain, which would be the plywood and the veneer and the flooring.
Right.
So they're working back through, and they've been pretty successful with that.
That's crazy. And I'm totally inclined to ask you, why does the U.S. government allow it? But I realize that's a whole nother show, isn't it?
I wish we knew. I will say that it does appear that the anti-dumping suit is going to succeed. They're announcing it probably even before the show airs.
Okay.
And it could be a substantial, tax that people will have to pay, a retroactive duty actually, which makes the price of Chinese goods in the future very volatile, and you don't actually know what you're going to have to pay as a supplier. I don't think that maybe ties in too much with, a designer wouldn't have to worry about that, but whoever is actually carrying that inventory would be responsible for paying, whatever the duty is.
Wow.
For stuff they already purchased.
Right. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy. Okay. All right. And the thing is, Allie, are we saying that in addition to this practice, which is putting our U.S. manufacturers at a disadvantage, are we also saying that the quality of the product isn't as good, or that's not part of it? The quality of the product, they have product that's at low level all the way to quality level, and it's just this practice of not being able to compete with, this. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, I think absolutely you can get very high-end, beautiful, well-made product that does come from China.
Okay.
I just think that the difference, as a consumer, it's just hard to know which is which. Okay. They don't have as much transparency, I think, as manufacturers in Europe and in the U.S.
Okay. Understood. Okay. So now, your company, American OEM, you are a company that, do you want to talk a little bit about the quality of your product? I saw it in the factory. I saw all the different layers being put together, and I saw the quality control checks that you have on it. Do you want to speak to that a little bit and give us some background on what your product does and has and does differently?
Sure. I'll just kind of hit the highlights, on the things that we really try to focus on. Obviously, we're big wood nerds. We're very passionate about doing this. And, I'm fourth generation in the industry, so we've been doing it a long time and improving the process along the way. We work from all domestic raw materials. So your, American oaks and hickories and maples, and we have some walnuts as well. And we like that because it feels more sustainable. We know every state in the U.S. is in a positive growth rate with logs, hardwood that's growing. So that means we're not cutting down more than we're using. And actually, we have 50% more volume of hardwood growing in the U.S. than we did 50 years ago. So we're doing a great job here. We like to stay with that, not only carbon footprint, but because the resource is sustainably managed. We also are extremely vertically integrated, which is pretty unique. Most people are buying either the veneer or they're buying the actual pressed plywood panels, which is exactly what it sounds like. If you went to Home Depot, you buy plywood, it's layered, wood. We actually press that ourselves. That gives us a ton of control over the process at every step. And we have quality control people making checks at every step in the process as well. So we take quality very seriously as far as the construction and the durability and stability of the actual wood plank. But the best part, the most fun part is really the design. And because we have the offender laborers, we have more people in the plant than I think a lot of other American manufacturers. We certainly use technology to our advantage, but your community, your listeners know this better than, most of the people that I talk with. When you do something by hand, whether it's adding highlights and lowlights to, the color, or you hand texture something, it looks different and warmer and richer than if you have a machine do it. Your eye does sense it, even if you don't know exactly why. You can tell and you can feel it. And, hardwood is typically done all the way throughout the home, and it's the foundation really of the design. So we believe in putting in high quality, durable products with beautiful designs that are really made in such a way that, of course, they're fresh and they are current in styling and color, but they're not so trendy that you're going to be sick of it in 5 years, because they're, engineered and constructed to last way longer than that. So we have a saying, we don't want them to ugly out before they wear.
That's a great way to say it. I want them to ugly out before they wear out. That's awesome. I love that. Yes, that's so funny. Okay, and so tell us a little bit about the difference between wood flooring and LVT. What is LVT? I'm sure many designers listening know, but there's got to be somebody that's like, yeah, that's great. I'd love to know what that is.
Well, and the category is getting so broad and so diverse. I think it's really hard to keep up with it. Certainly if you're not in the industry thinking about it day in and day out like I am. But LVT stands for luxury vinyl tile. And the biggest difference between LVT and hardwood is that the visual in a wood flooring, product comes actually from that natural wood. So all of the character and the graining and the knots, all of that is naturally occurring in the wood, and it never repeats. On an LVT product, we're scanning an image of that wood veneer, and we're replicating that with a printer. So if you can remember even far back enough when we actually used to print out pictures, when you would pick them up, they were ink on vinyl paper, and that is the same paper and process that gives an LVT product its visual. So you could have a wood visual, you could have a concrete tile visual, travertine, whatever. They can print anything on the plank that they want, and what they do is they take that vinyl paper and they press it on an engineered, certain different layers that all have PVC or a plastic type composite, and then they cover the printed vinyl film with the visual on it. They cover that with a clear vinyl wear layer, and then they use the same type of topical kind of liquid finishes that we use for scratch resistance and wear resistance. So the liquid part that's cured is the same as wood flooring, but everything below that on a vinyl product is going to be made of PVC and be in a printed design that does actually repeat. And also they have fixed lengths, which I think is kind of something you don't always think about. But in real hardwood, you have a variety of lengths in the carton, and that gives it a more natural and random look too, as opposed to an LVT product, which is all going to be fixed 7 inches by 48 inches, for example.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that reminds me of in your quality control process, back to the true hardwood floor, of the guys looking for the pieces that had flaws in that department where they get pulled off. And there's that whole section there where they work on them and then they get looked at again. And yes, they're now up to snuff, or nope, they're going to the scrap yard, right?
Yeah, that's right. We call that rework. It's we have grading processes all the way throughout. We want to start, in the raw, naked wood. The ones that are going on the top of the product get graded into a rustic. For certain products that have, more of a reclaimed look, we have cleaner, less knots, less character would go into another grade. So that's at the very beginning. And then once it's actually pressed in a platform, it gets checked. And then once we put the stain and the texturing on before it goes in the carton, it gets checked again.
Yeah. Yeah, I was very interesting to see that the station where it gets checked before the color goes on for quality control was literally one man looking at a maximum, I think, of like 10 pieces of wood at one time.
Yeah, they're incredibly trained, and it's a highly skilled position in the plant.
Yeah, but I mean, when you think about the level of quality control, that you think about how many planks of wood that the factory is going to produce over an 8-hour working day, and the fact that a single man is looking at 10 pieces carefully at a time. Like I was very impressed. I remember Vin and I both looked at each other and thought, you would not have thought that. You would have thought that, 5 guys are looking at 50 pieces each and they're giving it a quick once over and saying, oh, looks good. Oh, wait, there's a really glaring piece over there. Let me pull that. But it was, whoa, this whole factory gets stopped here to one man with 10 pieces of wood. It was like a laboratory light over him. And he's just like examining, walking back and forth, like the 6 or 7 foot long, 8 foot long table that it was, looking at each piece. And I was like, this is insanity. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of factories, that have technology, they use lasers and algorithms to do some of those checks. I mean, it's not that we're opposed to technology, but some things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And people have a good sense for what's accepted. The truth is, in a natural product, it's not really a mathematical equation that makes the product look right or not. That's what LVT is trying to do. They reduce it to something that is, a scientific recipe, but it's really about if the homeowner loves that floor, and they don't start counting knots and looking at the overall look has to be right. And that's when you need somebody who's trained and using human eyes and sensibilities to make those calls.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So, and there's a place for the LVT as well, right? I mean, it's not,
Absolutely.
I mean, I was just asking for the difference between the two to understand what they are. I know we just got through Revel Woods, which probably came from you, an LVT floor for an apartment that we are renting, and we just renovated at above our Window Works location, and it looks outstanding. And,
Absolutely.
For this purpose of what we're doing there, we're going to rent it to a stranger, and it's probably not going to be a family. It's going to be some single person who may or may not really take tremendous, care of where it is. And so we were giving an eye to making it look beautiful, but making it feel like, okay, let's make this somewhat easy care and low maintenance and less risk, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's a less expensive product from the outset. It is, designed to be wet mopped and, I think in the rental market, you're seeing actually, wood used to go in all the high-rise condos. And I think a lot of the ones that are for rent as opposed to own are all LVT now because it's a great choice for that type of environment. So absolutely, there is a place for LVT, and the numbers, if you didn't believe me, you could look at the numbers because it's growing incredibly fast. And I think, from my standpoint, I've worked in both sides of the industry. I was in commercial vinyl for a significant portion of my career, and it's great for that as well. But there's always going to be a place for real hardwood also. And I think when you're, in your forever home, or you're at a stage of life where you are ready to kind of nest a little bit, put some money into it, you do feel differently. with a natural product on the floor.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that LVT can't be a really great, practical and price point solution for other phases of life. So I'm all for getting the right person or getting the person the right product for whatever their needs are.
Exactly. So Allie, let's talk a little bit about for an interior designer. It seems to me that so often, look, what I always say, there's no such thing as never, and there's no such thing as always. So, right? Like, I cannot say always this is the case or it's never the case. But I would say my experience working with interior designers is the case is that the floor is in. Even a designer that is been hired to do the full service of somebody has purchased a new home. They have so often this is the model. The architect, the consumer hires the architect. The consumer purchases the plot of land. The consumer hires the builder, and they get going on the house. And whether they start at ground one in this planning phase and hire a designer as well, or sometimes they wait until the house is, 3/4 through construction and they need to start to select the finishes and the hardware tree, the cabinetry and blah, blah, blah. But it seems like to me, so often the hardwood floor is just the hardwood floor that is magically shows up. Like the builder decides on it. Nobody even says, like, even when we built our own home back in the day. I don't even know if you were on the planet, Allie, when we did that. But the builder said to me, LuAnn, do you want a 2-inch wide oak plank or do you want like a 3-inch wide oak plank? It wasn't, which species would you like and what kind of look do you want? Now, I understand I'm a grown-up person. I could have said, hey, I want more options. But I think the idea is that there is a huge majority of homeowners and therefore designers that are involved in projects where the floor is just there. It's what color do you want on the floor, not what kind. And of course, I know, I've been involved with enough luxury high-end products to know that there is a segment of the market that will get down and dirty and on this and really have conversations with their builder and their designer about more than just 2.5 or 3-inch, oak. But my question is, if a designer is new to flooring and new to hardwood flooring, what are some of the things that you would say, hey, ask this of the builder or ask this of the supplier or ask your client to consider XYZ? Because then we're going to lead into, the genius of Revel Woods, okay? But you give us your opinion prior to that step.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'll tell you is they probably didn't have any other options at the time you were building that house because that's what it used to be. Gunstock, butterscotch, honey. Yeah. Those were your choices. And that was a time in my life when I would not have entered into the flooring industry because I thought it was boring.
Right.
So now we're doing so much more with it. And so the design has just exploded what we're able to do with that. So the first thing I would do is say, the longer and the wider products are very popular now with the open floor plan and open concept spaces because they match the scale of the rooms better. When you have little tiny 2.5-inch wide, that look can be great in a site finish. It's very it's just super neutral, classic look. That's perfect. But I think there are folks who really like that kind of, antique type look on the floor, and the big wide planks and long lengths really do elevate the space to something, very sophisticated. And the lines are very clean, I think, when you do that too, because you have less seams. So your eye doesn't get broken up constantly with that. So the scale and the size and the format is something that has changed dramatically over the last even 5 years. So everything we make is 8 feet long and 7 inches or 7.5 inches wide. So that's really our market, and it looks so pretty in the scale of the homes today. And then the second thing is, expand beyond just brown or gray or whatever. Looking at the species is what's going to usually dictate how much character, and by character we mean knots or mineral streaks and color variation. Character does not have to mean rustic or country or cabin. Now we're seeing character. I think the kind of increase in popularity on the modern farmhouse. Probably people are gagging now. And
thanks, Joanna.
Yeah, so, but having that type of heirloom type look, I think, makes a certain amount of character still feel very classic and very modern and not, country. But also, that's what gives you the forgiveness in the floor. So everyone, I think, maybe starts out at some point, unless they're very specific to a design style that, okay, I want the floors to be shiny and I want a dark finish and I want, a maple that has no character and that's going to give me the most contemporary look. The problem with that is you see every scratch, every footprint, every dent. And if you have dogs and kids, you don't have to go to LVT, but you really should go to a product that has some sort of visual camouflage built in by the way of knots and texture. And it makes for a much happier client longer term, because as that floor ages, it is a patina. It's character that your family adds to the floor over time. It doesn't start out perfect and it never needs to be perfect. So I think character is your best friend. Lower gloss products, not super high shine, that a lot of people sort of equate shiny, I think, with expensive or with clean. It's sort of a legacy, from the 80s and 90s. But truthfully, the more matte finishes will give you the most forgiveness to really live on the floor without, seeing every imperfection down the road.
Right. And this is where John Dupre had me at hello when he did his sponsored show. Okay. So the thing about what Revel Woods does, and you and John are friends, you are personal friends, right? And you are both, hardwood flooring family babies, right?
Also royalty in flooring too.
Exactly. Right. He calls you flooring royalty, but he also is, in fact, his father Craig is now the president of the National Hardwood Flooring Association, correct?
Yeah, he's the acting chairman.
Chairman.
Yeah.
Yep. And as a matter of fact, it hasn't happened yet as you and I are speaking, but Revel Woods is sponsoring my Power Talk Friday coaching event in Las Vegas, and John's parents, Craig and Catherine, will be joining us for our celebration dinner that night. And so I'm looking forward to meeting them. By the time you guys hear this, this will have happened and I will have had the privilege of meeting them. But John was on the show on episode 329. And Allie, what you just said perfectly leads me into what really, and I have to say, it's so funny. I interview 450 people at this point, right? And so often at dinner with Vin, I'll be like, "Oh, you should hear what I learned today on the show." And he "Oh, that's interesting." And some catches attention and some don't. When I was like, "You're not going to believe what this kid is doing with hardwood floorings." He's like, "Oh, whatever, la la la." He was like, "What?" And so, huge fan. And just to recap, what he's doing, Allie, is, first of all, he's one of your clients. You at American OEM are at this in this factory here in Tennessee. You are creating and producing hardwood floors that are available to designers through Revel Woods. So that's the channel distribution. A designer can't go to American OEM. That's not how this works, right? So you have to get a distribution channel. You have many. John is not, and Revel Woods is not the only one. But so what happens is John has worked with you, Allie, and he has gone down there and his team has decided, the best of the best in the price categories that they want to offer, the most interesting, the things that they feel are the cutting edge that are going to serve the designer market and their aesthetic the best. And then what I love is that he's created this program, a computer program algorithm. So you just talked a few moments ago, but if you've got children and dogs and you want to take that into consideration. And so what John has developed with Revel Woods is you, as an interior designer, can go into the program and you say, "Hey, my client lives in zip code XYZ. This hardwood floor that I want to specify is for a kitchen. This room I want to specify is a bathroom. This one I want to specify is a laundry. This is a family room. And I want this sort of a look, this sort of a color. And this house has 2 dogs and 3 cats and 16 kids, or this is a retired couple." And basically, the algorithm will spit out for you as an interior designer only the species of woods that will perform in those conditions, so that you're not going to specify to somebody, like Allie was saying, a wood that doesn't have built in. If you've got 2 or 3 kids and a couple of animals and it's the kitchen, it's going to get a lot of traffic. She's saying, look for a floor that has built-in camouflage. Well, that's easy for Allie to say because Allie is 4th generation hardwood flooring, right? But the rest of us are just like, that one looks pretty. I love that one, right? And so, and it isn't, and I don't mean to disparage. I'm sure there interior designers are insanely knowledgeable about hardwood floors, but I also know that there's a lot of us that would simply just look at the color and the stain, and that might be all we consider, whereas the species underneath of it is also going to contribute to, like you said, if it's going to ugly out or wear out, right, Allie?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah, and designers have so many products to specify. They're looking at the project holistically. You cannot be an Allie or a John in hardwood and also be the you in your business. Mm-hmm. I mean, I couldn't do your job, but I think that is really the brilliance of what John has created, is that it's like we're sitting right there. Right. And so it's just when you think you have it figured out, okay, well, this one has character and it's a good medium color, so it's not going to show wear. Then, John or I would say, you can't have hickory. You live in Denver. It's too dry. You think you have it figured out, and it's still complicated because it's a natural product. But John's taken all, I think, of the sort of stress and worry out of that. So you can do what you do best as a designer, which is get the aesthetic looking perfectly. And then you let John worry about the performance side. And he knows what he's talking about. And we developed the collections together that, of what he sells of our product. We developed that with his customer in mind, and really nobody else is doing that, which I think is the other part of what makes Revel Woods so special, is he is only thinking from the perspective of a designer client and their customer, and maybe you get some of that in other places, but it's nothing else is as simple and as guaranteed to be, perform and be exactly what you want.
Right. And that's the truth. I love the way you describe that. It's like you could get 2 or 3 of the criteria down, but not recognize that hickory is not, that it might have the look that you want. It might have the stain available and you want. It might have the variation and the texture that you want, but it's not going to perform in a certain climate like Denver or something like that. And that's where that is, and it is. It takes the guesswork. I have to tell you, when I explained it to Vinny, he was like, we should sell hardwood floor now. And I was like, okay, seriously? He's like, why not? He's taking all the guesswork out of it. Yeah. Let's do it. And I was like, okay, we have a lot to do every day.
Add one more thing.
You know what I mean? But Vinny is all over it. He loves it. And the other reason that Vin is all over it and is all in and loves what John is doing, and the same with me, is because this is one of the only models that is allowing an interior designer to earn money in the hardwood flooring industry, right? So because right now the model is that you go to a retailer and you work with your wood flooring retailer, and maybe they have this trade-ish division, right, where they're working with you. But with Revel Woods, you can go in as the interior designer, specify everything, and then your client can go in and order it. But then Revel Woods, through your trade program, is going to give you a percentage of that sale. So like your client is now thinking, oh, I was just going to go out on the highway and buy floor. Why should I buy it from you? Well, I have all the safeguards built in here. I have a nice curated product line. I have all these safeguards built in, and you can still buy it yourself, right? And so that's the thing with this. But so, Allie, I know that you love this. I know that you love this, but there is also another division of your company that I do want to take a moment to talk about, and that's called Hardwood, right?
Yes.
And Hardwood is on one level, it is where your company, American OEM, meets the retail consumer, correct?
Yeah, it is our kind of family flagship brand. So it's our way to sort of continue our legacy in the industry with our story, basically, and leverage the history that we have. And with Hardwood, we created a new brand through American OEM to do that, but it allows us to control the product mix and the branding, but it still goes through the traditional channels, through a retail flooring store via a distributor.
Right. And so the thing about it is the differential here is whether, and I'm just, going to put it right out there, whether you are working with Revel Woods or you are finding Hardwood on the retail, you're getting an Allie product. You're getting an American OEM product, right?
If it's a made in America product, it does come. I think we're John's only American supplier. So
yeah. So the thing about that is that I feel like what John has done has taken an industry that has understandably been dominated by a retail chain of distribution, a retailer that is capable of making investment in inventory, is capable of having multiple people on staff that are knowledgeable and multiple installers that can do all this. So what it is it's if you're an interior designer and you have a local retailer that you've been working with and they are offering you the Hardwood line, that's Allie's line. And we know the quality that's happening in that line. And if that works for you all day long, right? All day long, stay there, do that, and don't fix what's not broken, right? But if you're new to Hardwood and you're new to thinking about how to make money in this end of the industry, and maybe you're leaving money on the table because you've been concerned about and had doubts about how to specify it, John has come along. And to your point, Allie, he is the only person who is talking directly to the interior design industry and creating a model that puts them in the distribution process and puts them in the process of making money during it, right?
Absolutely, because it's a big ticket item. I mean, wood jobs can be $20,000, and if you can get commission on that, why wouldn't you?
Right, exactly, yeah. Right. So I just think it's awesome. It's, it's so funny because there's just some people that when you meet them, laid eyeballs on you. We had 2 sentences and I felt like I knew you 20 years. You know what I'm saying? And I just think your passion for your family legacy, for your family business, for your family industry is so palatable, and it's just so it's infectious, Allie, the way you care about this and the way you're invested and so knowledgeable about it. And it made me want to know more, and which is exactly why we led to this show. I just thought, oh, there's more there. I have to know more about this.
Well, I appreciate that so much. It really is I could have been born maybe into something a little sexier than wood flooring, but I think we made it pretty sexy. We're doing our best over here, and John's helping with that. That's sort of our joke. So yeah, we're very, very lucky to be in such a nice industry that has some, ability to make something with your hands. I just find that really cool, and not many people get that, anymore.
No, I know it's rare. And it was also fun to see the two of you together and to see that you almost are like twins, when you see, like, I have 3 sets of twin cousins, and, yeah. And it's so fun because when they're together and they're especially, when they're riffing or laughing, there's 8 of us in a room laughing and talking, but there's something special in the communication and just the gestures and stuff. And I felt the same way with you and John. It was like these two just come from the same environment. They just know the same language. They've grown up in an industry at the knee of their parents and grandparents and just know this inside and out. And they both have that same passion for it. And I love that you have completely different takes on it. You have completely different ways that you serve the hardwood flooring industry, but that you have figured out a way to do it together too. And that's awesome. Yeah.
No, it's so much. He makes it really fun. And it is funny to me, though. John is one of the only people in the world that makes me feel like I don't talk that much.
Now there's 3 of us.
Yeah, me, you, and John in a room. I don't know who would win, but it did make for a very fun mill tour. So you guys are invited back anytime.
Oh, it was awesome. It was such a transformative experience to be in that environment and to see all the different ways that you are affecting not only the men in the program, their lives, their extended family lives, and like you said, the inmates and the guards in the prison having a better experience because they're invested in being on their best behavior and making the changes that are necessary. But then all of us, the quality of the product that's available to us to specify and put into our projects is just amazing, Allie. So I have to say thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing all this with us. And I guess for sure you can learn about Revel Woods at revelwoods.com. And what do you want to share, Allie? How would you want them to go to hearthwood.com? What do we want to say to learn about your companies?
Yeah, I would say hearthwoodfloors.com probably has the best mix of sort of the product designs and some of the history, but AmericanOEM.com is another way to see us kind of in our more manufacturing-driven type B2B website.
Yeah, the American OEM website is nice. It's you really do get that sense of history and tradition and the legacy there. The picture with you and your dad on there is so cute too. So
I'm his mini-me. We look much alike. I could never not claim them, but luckily I don't need to. So.
That's it. So, well, thank you, Allie, again. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your sharing all your information with us. You have a great day, okay?
Thank you, LuAnn. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be. All of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.